Hey everyone, Micah from Movie Maker Magazine here. Today I got a chance to talk to some of the filmmakers from Indeed's Rising Voices program. I'm gonna put a link to all the short films in the description below. I really encourage you guys to watch them because they're all really great. Full disclosure, Elisee had to leave early because of a personal issue, and Dre Ryan enters in a little later. Hope you enjoy.
Real quick, what what budget are you guys used to operating at before you made these short films?
Um,
Uh,
maybe no budget.
yeah, a
Um,
plethora of stuff.
I think for me, because I'm still at AFI, so I'm still in school. So literally like last year was my first year. So we had like AFI based on our tuition gave us like a budget of $4,400. So I would say that's the budget I've like did my past two short films with. So we went from 4,000 to 100K real fast, you know?
Yeah, I funded all of my films out of pocket, or I'll do crowdsourcing. And it's usually, I mean, it'll range from like $20 to like 1,000. Whatever I could get my hands on, really. So it was also a really big jump for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, similar to Stacy, I graduated film school just a few years back, and even then in film school, I will range around 2 grand to about 8 grand as far as budget range, and then afterwards, I did a documentary for 15 grand. So between the 5 grand to 15 grand range is what I'm used to dealing with.
What was day one like the biggest difference you guys noticed from winning to day one of production in this company, like in your short film?
I don't know. I feel like everything happened so fast. So I'm like, even on day one, despite having a bigger budget, I was still as stressed as day one in my first, cycle movie at AFI as a director. I don't know. I feel like the nervousness, no matter the amount of money, there's still this like, okay, is everyone going to show up on time? It's like that pressure, but also the nervousness of having the first shot up. Because I think usually day one, I feel like everyone's like trying to get each other's rhythm and flow. So it's like just trying to get to that first shot, you know? So yeah, I think I still felt the intense of this, just like, oh my gosh, are we behind or are we on time? Will we have enough time to do this? I feel like despite the money, time is still it's still hard.
Yeah, that is Stacy. You're 1,000% right. Like I couldn't agree more. It's like I was on the first day. I wasn't even thinking about the budget. I was thinking more about time because at the end of the day, you still have 12 hours, to get your movie made that day. And for some of us who's shooting with children, we got 7 to 8 to 9 hours to get it done. So at the time, my mindset wasn't even thinking about the 100K. My mindset was like, how do we get shot up as soon as possible? Because at that point, money is not even a thought. It's more so what's the creative process, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I forgot about the budget a long time ago, bro. Um, to be real with you, it's mainly just like I was just there to, make some movie magic, get the story going, and have some fun with the crew and team in creating an experience for what we were trying to tell and what we were trying to do, and trying to create.
I,
It
I
wasn't
was
about the budget for me. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, because I remember our first shot, the first scene was outside and there was a car parked in front of where we were gonna shoot. So despite the budget, there was still someone that like, even though there was no parking, they parked and we're like, whose car? We don't know whose car it is. So I think there's always these things that you have to always pivot, it's like, that was the last thing I was like thinking of like, oh, there's gonna be a car in our shot. That's not one of our cast or crew, So
Mhm.
that was the first thing our production team was trying to figure out.
Now, I know one thing on the first day I did feel the impact versus any other shoot was COVID. Because we had to make sure everybody was tested correctly and everyone was good to be on set. And I remember that just created so much of a delay versus in my previous productions, everybody shows up to set, we get to work. But I just remember having to have that on my mind as I'm going into production that day. So I felt like COVID and the COVID appliance process was a big difference on that day one versus any other production I've been a part of.
Is there anything that you guys were really narratively excited to do on this short film?
I feel like there was a lot of things I was challenging myself with, you know, because technically it's like, first I'm like still in school. So I have like assignments I'm like trying to do and then also trying to deliver, you know, a short film. But I think for me, it was like writing this, like, it was like, this is a feature. And I was like trying to like condense this moment to give the audience this world that's so big and so layered, but I wanted us to like have a day in the life of this character. And I think something I was really excited for is like, I always love like magical realism. And I realized like even with my shorts in school, I was like slowly like playing with little magical realism moments, but then to like actually like do like, this is gonna be like a fantasy dream dance sequence. And the way I wrote about the fabric, it was like bigger. And I was really nervous. And there were people asking me like, how are you going to execute this? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out. And like me and my DP, literally, we spent a day like just playing with red chiffon and fabric and like moving it around. And we're like, how are we going to do this transition? How are we going to take from like present day, like, you know, her reality and take us as the audience, but also as the character to this, like, because for me, that moment was like, home is calling her, like a piece of home is coming to her, you know? And I felt like, especially like the immigrant story, it's just this hunger for home, you know, even if it's just like smelling the air in your island or something. I don't know. It was just like, I don't know. I was like, okay, how do I articulate like the magic of the island and how this music is special to this character? And like when she plays this little cassette, a piece of home comes to her and makes her space beautiful, you know? And I was nervous, you know, because I was like, okay, how are we going to capture this? We can't do fancy, you know, Avatar VFX because that would be the whole budget. You know, my movie would just be that one scene. They'll be like, that's it. I'm like, yeah, the VFX, didn't you like? So yeah, I was really excited and I was just really proud of us, like the way we executed it. But yeah.
Well, to follow up with Stacy's just amazing point, it's always hard to follow up Stacy. For me, there's this concept I learned a few months before making my movie was about widening the lens and kind of widening the lens on what the Black experience was and kind of how we visualize ourselves and our experiences. And I wanted to kind of explore the idea of compassion and love and intimacy within the Black community that I feel like isn't often shown, but truly exists. And in making this film, you know, I was excited to show like the normality of the Black experience. Like what it is like to go into a bar. What's it like to have a conversation with our fathers when there's a little bit of distance between us, you know, and not so much explore, you know, violence and pain. But if we do explore pain, let's explore the emotional pain and not the physical one. And so I was just interested in exploring these ideas and these concepts that are true in our daily lives, but hasn't been shown in cinema as often as I would like, or as often I would like to see. So I was very excited to just kind of explore that and present that for, you know, the mass audience to show like, hey, intimacy is a part of our lives. Love is a part of our lives. Pain is a part of our lives. Hope is a part of our lives. Now let's see it on the screen.
I think music for me, it was something about being able to have the ability to have two types of music coming from two different places. I was very excited. I always wanted to make a music film. The little boy is basically me. I played this instrument for years, and I always wanted to put that on screen because no much people don't know what that instrument is, but I definitely wanted to have score and the sound mixed in. That was in the script. It's always been there. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but it was very interesting and fun, to do that, and also to make it more towards a higher person, which in this case would be his mom. I wanted it to sound like something that my mom, usually listens to, something maybe more of a lullaby, which was also in the script. So narratively, I think music was that one thing that I always wanted to, play around with. But I would say, yeah, man.
One of the things I was excited about doing, one story I was excited to tell that was kind of a visual story too, was like, actually you see the depiction of female pleasure and orgasm, frankly, twice, right? You see her achieve it, and you see her achieve it through the mind, actually, through the imagination, through a fantasy, which it's ultimately revealed as a fantasy. But I think the experience is real for her, but also I'm depicting that orgasm, and the character is trying to achieve that in a performance down the road. But so I'm showing it once in the clinical session, but then I'm showing it in the finished film, like how she got there. And so I think it's kind of not radical, but cool. At least I did really want to go after trying to depict female pleasure, not once but twice in the short film, and something that was closer to a more like genuine or non-performative orgasm, even though of course I'm still making a film. So Dina, the actress, did perform those orgasms. They're not real. But I think so that was like one thing that I was interested in. And the other thing just around the racial differential between the white clinician, the therapist, and the woman of color who's the actress, and the patient. Like, race isn't in the foreground of this film, but it's implied and embedded as a power dynamic in the relationship of patient to therapist to patient. But also Dina is, a woman of color, and I wanted the character to be a woman of color. And so, that's just, you just see it rendered. You're just living in that two characters, a white character and a woman of color, as they interface in this intimate way, and what that looks like. So there's a lot of power dynamics happening also around race.
Is there anything that you guys learned on these projects that you will now take on to your next projects? David, how about you go first this time?
I was thinking just about what was my overall experience, and how am I moving forward next time. So I think with this project, you have to deal with multiple heads, right? Because normally when I work on a project, I'm the top voice. I make final decisions. There's nobody I have to really consult with or run it by. And I think with this project taught me how to collaborate with executive producers and quote unquote studio heads, because now you have to take their opinion into, consideration. And there might be times where you might have your stance on something, they might have their stance on something, but how do you guys come to the medium and find a happy place? And so moving from this experience, it taught me, okay, next time you work with a studio, all right, this is how you collaborate with executive producers. This is how you collaborate with EPs. This is how you collaborate with financiers. And I think that's helpful, because we pretty much want to move higher and better. And the higher we go, the more of those interactions we're going to have. So I think this was something that was very important to my development as a director, learning how to collaborate with other moving parts.
Well, you know what's kind of interesting for me? It's like, I haven't shot my thesis yet to graduate BFI. I'm shooting technically end of August. So I feel like there's a lot of things that from that experience that I'm going to definitely bring, because, you know, my next movie, Ritmo, it's like a dance film, but it's a love story. So now, because, you know, I had that experience of like composing and writing and doing original music, seeing how I like, you know, did that. Like we had a week to turn around our original music. So like all the music we had was like original. I even sang in the kitchen song that I wrote and sang that song. And I did that in a day. But I think for me, it just showed me like all the things I do, like coming from that dancing background and actor and music, it like all came together. And in a way, it was like a confident boost, like, wow, you're a boss. Like, that's pretty awesome how you were able to like bring all these worlds and your artistry and how you infuse it. So I think my next movie, I'm doing 2 dance sequences. So we're going 2.5 dance sequences, but also it's like I'm exploring just like this romantic relationship between these Afro-Latinos in Miami. So yeah, it definitely, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, I was baptized through fire. That's how it felt, because it was literally like so many things I was trying to do. LA for New York, a period piece. This short was doing so much that it made me realize like, oh, anything's possible. It's gonna be hard. But it gave me I think I got my stripes. I think I'm ready.
Oh, I didn't even notice that you didn't shoot in New York, so if that helps.
Wow, you see? Well,
Yeah, I totally assumed like you got the small apartment down, you got the multiple people being there, like, you know, multi-generation of people living in one apartment, maybe.
yeah,
I felt it. I mean,
great.
and yeah, and making a dance film is not easy. I mean, I don't know if I mentioned, but like my last short film was a dance film, so it's like the
Yeah,
fact you have to deal with choreography too, which is a question for another day. But Dre, I
yeah.
would love to hear like
Yeah.
what you're gonna take onto your next project.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I had this wild experience going into this. Basically, when I found out that I got the funds, that I got into the program, like, you know, look, I write in TV. All I wanted to do was be a director. I went to film school. That's where I started. That's how I want to tell stories, is like as a filmmaker, writer, director. I've been working TV. I'm very grateful for that, but I've ultimately had to hand my babies off to other directors. And this was a chance to, you know, kind of disrupt that cycle and become a filmmaker. And because I went to film school and because I love the films, like we talked about, like these mid-century films and all the films of reference, like this idea of auteurism, right? It's like, it's been the target. And literally on the eve of going to make this movie, I was like, wait, pump the brakes. After the 2 years we've had, like the COVID, Black Lives Matter, everything breaking down, crumbling. I'm like, auteurism has to be interrogated as a white supremacist, patriarchal fallacy. Like that's, wait, fuck. I was like, I finally get to make my first film and I can't be an auteur. I have to interrogate auteurism. And like, also as a writer, I'm like constantly kind of feeling the negative aspects of auteurism from directors and from the industry. And I'm like, wait, there has to be a new way forward. So walking into this and certainly going forward, I was like, what is that? Because auteurism implies like, you know, like the vision. And for me also, I'm a huge, just like a fan of fiction. I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, the only fucking auteur is the fucking writer who stares down the empty page. You know, this is a collaborative art form, and auteurism is a construction, a white supremacist patriarchal construction that erases the collaborative collective labor of the, you know, in our case, like the 50 people who made this film together, or in a feature, the hundreds of people who made the film. And yes, there has to be a helming director, a helming vision, But what can that be other than auteurism? Because that's a fucking like bankrupt, fraudulent idea. And I think, so what I came up with is this idea of stewardship. The director, the filmmaker, is a steward of the story they're telling and of the vision that they're realizing. And what happens is that centers the work, not the self. Auteurism is about the fucking self, right? And it's about the author. Stewardship is about the work. And as a writer, that saves me every time when I go back to the work. So it would be no different as a filmmaker. Go back to the work, center the work. And what that also means, and the approach that I took on this and what I plan to do going forward, is my kind of idea is that the filmmaker has to be working twice as hard as everyone else. And to honor the value and the work of all the collaborators. And so for me, this idea of doing all the legwork, all the prep work, doing all the rigorous work so that you're jumping everybody into the deep end. At all your collaborators, all your department heads, your actors, even your producers, everyone can jump into the deep end of their collaboration with you. That's real leadership. That's stewardship, as opposed to this old fucking model where this swaggery model with this like white dude walking onto set, calling the shots, being the leader. Like, we need to rethink what leadership looks like. You know, it's not that. Like, that's often a fucking nightmare. And honestly, women I've worked with and people of color who model themselves on that, they're just replicating that. They may come in a different form, a female form or like a color form, but they're replicating a false and kind of faulty, dangerous model. And so that's my thing. It's not auteurism, it's stewardship. And I really found that going into this, and it was really exciting. Clearly, I feel very excited about it.
Thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to see what you all do next. And I hope that it's something that really makes you guys fulfilled. And I hope we can someday meet down the road and stay in touch. And congrats on your short films.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time and your great questions. Thank you guys too. It was great to see you again.